I had stepped out of a client meeting in Dallas and found a quiet corner of the hotel lobby. I was tired, but I missed him. We don't usually talk during the day. He claims to be too busy, and I'd believed him. Still, I thought a surprise video call might brighten both our afternoons. When his face appeared on my screen, he grinned, that same confident grin that had once felt like home. "Hey, babe. Dallas treating you okay?" he asked, his tie loose around his neck. I smiled back. "Yeah. Just on lunch. Thought I'd check in." "Lucky me," he said, leaning back, casual, the picture of a husband caught between meetings. And then it happened. The phone tilted in his hand. Barely a second, a slip so small it could have been nothing, but it wasn't nothing. Sunlight filtered through the blinds in our bedroom. Sheets twisted and rumpled in a way that screamed of bodies, not rest. And then, soft, unmistakable, a woman's laugh. He yanked the phone back up, so fast the screen blurred. "Sorry, dropped it. Anyway, how's Dallas? You eating okay?" His words tumbled out too quickly. His smile stretched too wide. My throat tightened, but my voice didn't betray me. "Yeah," I said evenly, holding his gaze. "Everything's fine." Behind him, faint but clear, the laugh came again. For a moment, his eyes flickered, panic breaking through the mask before he forced it back into place. That was all I needed. I let him talk. About meetings, about dinner, about nothing. I nodded, hummed, even blew him a kiss before I tapped end call. When the screen went black, I sat in silence, staring at my reflection. My chest was heavy, my stomach knotted, but my face was calm, almost serene. That's when I understood something most people never do. Silence can be deadlier than rage, because rage warns your enemy. Silence disarms them. And so I promised myself. He wouldn't see the storm coming until it ripped the ground out from under him. Now, standing here with the folder, I'm about to deliver on that promise. I take a step forward, my heels striking the polished floor like a drumbeat. One step, two. His head turns. Our eyes meet. And I watch it happen. That same flicker of unease, the instinct he can't control, the twitch in his smile that tells me somewhere deep down he knows. He knows the mask is about to slip for good. I stop at the table. Slowly, deliberately, I set the folder down. The crisp thud silences the chatter around us. Conversations falter. Glasses pause mid-air. All eyes turn toward me. He laughs nervously. "Hannah? This is a surprise. What are you doing here?" His voice is light, but I hear the tremor under it. I smile. Soft, controlled, deadly. "Thought I'd drop in. You don't mind, do you?" The silence stretches. His colleagues glance between us, sensing something but not yet understanding. He shifts in his chair, his confident posture wilting just slightly. "Good. Let him squirm." I rest my hand on the folder. I don't open it yet. Not yet. Suspense is part of the punishment. I want him to sit there, heart pounding, wondering which of his sins I've uncovered. Was it the affair? The bank account? The forged signature? Or all of them together, tied neatly into a noose? His smile falters. His throat bobs as he swallows. "Of course not," he says finally, his voice lower now, tight. I lean forward, my eyes locked on his. Good. Because I've got something to share. And just like that, the mask he's worn so perfectly all these years begins to crack. The same mask he thought would save him on that Tuesday afternoon when the phone slipped and the truth slipped with it. The same mask he thought could hide the woman in our bed, the laugh behind his shoulder, the life he thought he could live without consequence. He has no idea what's coming, but he's about to find out. People always imagine betrayal crashing into life like a car accident. Sudden, violent, impossible to miss. But the truth is, it seeps in quietly. So gently you almost don't notice until it's drowning you. Looking back, I realize there were 100 little signs before the day of the video call. Back then, though, my life looked enviably simple. I was 35, living in a quiet neighborhood in Austin. Our two-story house had white shutters and a wraparound porch I'd insisted on because I loved drinking coffee in the mornings while the world was still half asleep. I had my career in marketing, a team that respected me, and just enough travel to feel important, but not so much that I was ever gone too long. We had friends, dinner parties, barbecues, long Sunday afternoons stretched out with wine and music humming in the background. And then there was my husband, Daniel. Charming, ambitious, magnetic Daniel. To everyone else, he was the kind of man people trusted immediately. He could shake someone's hand and make them feel like the most important person in the room. To me, he was the man who had once driven 6 hours straight in college just to surprise me with flowers during finals. He was the man who said he wanted to build a life with me, not just a house. 12 years of marriage had carved out a rhythm. I woke early. He never did. I handled the bills. He insisted on handling investments. He loved making plans for the future, vacation homes, retirement goals, the children we always said we'd have but never did. When the time is right, he would say with that easy smile. Somehow, the right time never seemed to come. My friends envied me. "Hannah, he worships you," they'd say at brunch, watching him pull out chairs or brush a hand against my back. And I believed them, because it was easier than admitting the truth. Sometimes, when no one was looking, that tenderness vanished. It wasn't cruelty. Not exactly. More like a thin impatience, a sharpness that cut when I least expected it. If I asked about his day at the wrong moment, he'd sigh too loudly. If I mentioned a bill he'd forgotten, his jaw would tighten. They were small things, forgettable things. Or so I told myself. Once at a dinner party, a friend teased him about working late all the time. Daniel laughed, clinking his glass, and said, "What can I say? Somebody's got to keep us in this house." He meant it as a joke. Everyone laughed. But I felt the words lodge like a splinter. The somebody wasn't us. It was him. And the way he looked at me when he said it, half smile, half warning, made something cold settle in my chest. Still, I pushed it aside. That's what you do when you've built a life brick by brick. You ignore the cracks in the mortar because acknowledging them means admitting the foundation might be weaker than you thought. On weekends, I threw myself into routines that made everything feel solid. Saturday mornings were farmers' markets and coffee shops. Sunday afternoons were laundry and cooking meals for the week. Daniel would float in and out, always with a phone in hand, always with someone needing something. I used to joke that his phone was his real mistress. Sometimes, though, I caught shadows. A message notification turned quickly face down on the counter. A phone call answered in the other room. The smell of cologne he didn't wear for me. But then he'd walk through the door with takeout or kiss me unexpectedly, and I'd convince myself I was imagining things. Love does that. It teaches you how to rationalize, how to explain away the things you don't want to face. And the truth was, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in the man who made to-do lists for dream vacations we never took, who promised me, someday, more times than I could count. I wanted to believe in the nights we spent tangled up in laughter, not the mornings when he left early without saying goodbye. My world, before the slip of that phone, was ordinary in the way that feels safe, predictable, manageable. But if I'm honest, there was an unease beneath it, a quiet hum of something off-key I tried to ignore. One memory stands out now, though I brushed it off at the time. It was late on a Thursday. I'd been working on a campaign and came home earlier than expected. Daniel was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a glass of whiskey. His tie was off, his sleeves rolled up, the picture of casual confidence. "Didn't expect you back yet," he said, glancing at me with a flash of something. Surprise, annoyance, I couldn't tell. "I wrapped up early," I smiled, dropping my bag. "Thought we could have dinner together." He hesitated, just for a moment. Then the smile came, smooth as glass. "Of course, that's great." I remember walking past him and catching a faint scent, perfume, floral and unfamiliar, clinging to his shirt. "New cologne?" I asked, pausing. He chuckled, sipping his drink. Maybe the secretary hugged me goodbye. You know how people are. I laughed it off. Let it slide. Because what else could I do? Argue over perfume that might have floated across a room? Demand an explanation I wasn't ready to hear? That was the red flag. The beginning of the end. I didn't know it then. But now, standing on the edge of everything that came after, I can see it clearly. Betrayal doesn't begin with a laugh in your bedroom. It begins in the small lies you let yourself believe. The call was supposed to be nothing. Just a midday check-in. The kind of small tenderness that keeps marriages alive. I remember balancing my laptop on the hotel desk, the muted hum of Dallas traffic outside the window, and his face lighting up my screen. "Hey, babe," he said, grinning. His voice was warm, casual, like he'd just walked in from the office. "How's Dallas treating you?" I leaned back in my chair, smiling. "Busy. I thought I'd catch you on lunch break. Didn't think you'd actually pick up." "Lucky timing," he said, loosening his tie. He looked tired, but not in a way that worried me. More like the kind of tired that comes with being important. And then, the slip. He shifted in his chair, adjusting his phone. For a single heartbeat, the camera tilted. The image blurred, then steadied, and in that unguarded moment, I saw it. Our bedroom. The sunlight slicing through the blinds, the sheets tangled and pushed halfway off the mattress, and a shoulder, pale, bare, unmistakably feminine, slipping into frame. Then came the sound, a soft laugh, teasing, intimate. A laugh I knew instantly didn't belong to me. My chest constricted. I didn't breathe. My brain scrambled to tell me it was a trick of the light, a sound from the TV, anything but what it was. But he moved too quickly, too sharply. The phone jerked, his face snapping back into the center of the screen. His smile was too wide, too controlled. "Sorry," he said too fast. "Drop the phone. Anyway, how's Dallas? You eating okay?" I stared at him. I could still hear it, faint and muffled. Another giggle, almost like it was mocking me through the speaker. I forced my lips into a smile. "Yeah," I said, steady. "Everything's fine." His eyes flickered just for a second. Panic, then charm again. "Good. I miss you." I nodded. "Miss you too." He rambled after that. About work, about dinner, about nothing. And I let him. I let him fill the silence with noise while I sat there, my heart pounding in my ears. I blew him a kiss, ended the call, and then the screen went black. The quiet that followed was deafening. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at my reflection in the dark screen. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might vomit. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the weight of what I had just seen. It wasn't the shoulder. It wasn't even the laugh. It was the ease of it, the way he lied without hesitation, the way he looked me dead in the eye and pretended nothing had happened. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a stupid mistake, a lapse in judgment. This was planned, practiced, perfected. How many times had he done this? How many lunches? How many afternoons? How many stolen hours in the home we built together? I thought of the perfume I'd smelled weeks before, brushed off with a laugh. I thought of the late nights. The phone turned face down. The half smile when he said he was keeping us in this house. All the cracks I had ignored came rushing back, and for the first time, I saw them clearly. This wasn't new. It had been happening right in front of me, and I had been too willing, too trusting to see it. Grief hit first, sharp and blinding. I buried my face in my hands, sobs tearing through me before I could stop them. It felt like my ribs were caving in, like I was being hollowed out from the inside. The man I loved, the man I had defended to friends and family, was a fraud. And I wasn't just losing him. I was losing the life I thought we had built. Then came rage. Hot. Acidic. It surged through me like fire in my veins. I wanted to scream, to call him, to drive home and drag that woman out of my bed by her hair. I wanted to break something, to make him feel just a fraction of the shattering I felt in that moment. But I didn't. I sat there trembling until the rage burned down into something colder, something sharper. Because rage is noisy. Rage warns your enemy. And Daniel didn't deserve the warning. I remembered my father's words from years ago when he taught me chess. Never let them see the queen coming. Keep her quiet. Keep her patient. That's how she wins. I lifted my head. My cheeks were wet, my hands shaking, but my face was calm, almost serene. In that silence, I saw the truth. Daniel wasn't clumsy. He hadn't made a mistake. He was arrogant. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I would see, and I would doubt myself. He thought I'd laugh it off, the way I had with the perfume, with the late nights, with every little crack in the foundation. But he was wrong. For the first time, I saw him not as my husband, not as the man I had loved for 12 years, but as the enemy. And enemies don't get warnings. They get destroyed. I stood up, wiping my face. My grief didn't vanish. It clung to me like smoke. But beneath it was something steadier, stronger, a vow forming, sharp and unshakable. He thought he had fooled me. He thought he had won. But I was already planning the moment he would lose everything. And when it came, he would never see it coming. Grief fades slowly, like a bruise. But rage sharpens into something harder. In the days after that call, I moved like a ghost through our house. I spoke when spoken to, laughed when expected, kissed him goodnight as though nothing had changed. He never noticed. That was his weakness. His belief that his charm could smooth over any crack, that I would never look too closely. He had no idea he was living with a woman who had already seen him stripped bare. One night I stood in the doorway of our bedroom watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell, his mouth slightly open, a hand draped across my side of the bed, the same bed where, just days before, another woman's laugh had echoed. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to stand there, memorizing the image. He looked so peaceful, so unthreatened, so certain of his control. That's when the thought solidified. I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a dramatic fight he could twist against me later. No, I would stay, and I would wait. Because leaving would mean freedom for him, but staying meant power for me. It wasn't easy to keep my mask in place. At breakfast, he scrolled his phone, smirking at messages he pretended were from coworkers. "Got a big project deadline coming up," he said, not looking at me. His fork scraped his plate, his voice casual. "Might be late a few nights this week." I sipped my coffee, nodding. "Of course. Do what you need to." His eyes flicked up, wary for a moment, then reassured by my easy smile. He grinned, leaned over, kissed my cheek. "You're the best, Hannah. Really." The taste of betrayal lingered on my skin, but I didn't flinch. I let him believe he was winning. At work, I buried myself in tasks, but inside my head, I replayed the call over and over. The way the sunlight had fallen across our sheets, the sound of her laugh, muffled but smug, the flicker in his eyes when he realized he might have been caught. Each time I remembered it, my resolve hardened. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about humiliation. Mine. His. I wouldn't heal by walking away. I would heal by watching him lose everything he thought he controlled: money, reputation, respect, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the ruins of the empire he'd built on lies. The turning point came 2 weeks later. He was in the living room, sprawled across the couch, phone in hand. He laughed too loudly, typing quickly, fingers moving with the ease of habit. I walked in quietly, carrying a glass of wine. "Who are you texting?" I asked lightly. He glanced up, flashing that easy smile. "Just work stuff." I tilted my head, sipping my wine. "At 10 o'clock on a Friday?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly before he chuckled. "You know me? Always busy." I smiled back, walking past him. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice calm. "Of course, you're always busy." He relaxed, chuckling again, sinking deeper into the couch. He thought the moment was over. He thought I had swallowed the lie like I always had. That's when I knew for certain. He underestimated me completely. He thought I was soft, predictable, loyal to the point of blindness. And maybe I had been. Once. But the woman standing in that room with a glass of wine in her hand wasn't the same woman who had blown him a kiss on a hotel video call. That woman had died the moment the screen went black, and in her place was someone colder, someone who could smile sweetly while sharpening a blade behind her back. That night, when he finally went upstairs, I stayed in the living room. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the clock on the wall. I sat on the couch where he had just been, staring at the indent his body left in the cushions. For the first time, I whispered it aloud. "I'm going to destroy you." The words were quiet, but they rang in the air like a promise. I didn't sleep much after that. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, planning. I didn't know every detail yet, but I knew the rules. First, I had to be patient. Second, I had to be invisible. And third, when I struck, it had to hurt where it mattered most. I turned my head to look at him as he slept beside me, mouth slack, utterly unaware. His phone lay on the nightstand, glowing faintly with unread messages. He trusted me not to touch it. He trusted me to stay asleep. He was already wrong. By the time morning came, my mask was back in place. I made him coffee, kissed his cheek, watched him walk out the door like nothing had changed. He didn't notice the way my eyes lingered on him. He didn't notice the calculation behind my smile, but I noticed. Because in that moment, I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his executioner, waiting for the right time to strike. And the first move in his downfall had already been made. Revenge doesn't come in one stroke. It comes in whispers, in late nights, in the quiet discipline of watching without being seen. If betrayal was his game, then patience would be mine. The first step was information. Always information. You can't dismantle a man's life if you don't know where the weak beams are hidden. Daniel had always controlled the big picture of our finances, investments, retirement accounts, even the mortgage paperwork. He insisted it was easier if he handled it all. For years I'd let him, convincing myself it was a relief. But now I saw it for what it was. Control. So I waited until he showered one night and slipped into his office. His laptop sat open on the desk, glowing faintly in the dark. My hands trembled as I scrolled, half terrified he would step out dripping wet and catch me. But the deeper I dug, the faster the fear dissolved into fury. Accounts I didn't know existed. Transfers I'd never approved. A credit card in my name with balances I hadn't charged. He wasn't just sleeping with someone else. He was building a world without me, using me as the scaffolding. The rage almost broke me then. I wanted to slam the laptop shut, march into the bathroom, and scream until the walls rattled. But instead, I took photos. Screenshot after screenshot. Every line item, every fraudulent transfer, every account number. My phone became a vault of his lies. The second step was allies, not friends. Friends can gossip, falter, slip. I needed professionals. Quiet, discreet, loyal only to the paycheck. I found a lawyer first, a woman recommended by a colleague who'd survived her own ugly divorce. Over coffee, I slid my phone across the table and let her scroll in silence. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pressed tight. "When did you find this?" she asked finally. 2 weeks ago. She looked up at me, studying my calm expression. "You've said nothing to him?" Not a word. Her smile was small, approving. "Good. That's how you win." With her guidance, I started separating myself financially. A private account in my name. A quiet transfer of small amounts he wouldn't notice. She assured me that when the time came, the evidence would bury him. But legal ruin wasn't enough. Legal ruin was quiet. I wanted noise. That's when the idea took root. Humiliation. If he had betrayed me in our home, in broad daylight, then his downfall should be just as public. Step 3. The mask. Keeping my composure was harder than I expected. One night, as we sat on the couch, his phone buzzed face down beside him. I glanced at it, and he caught me. "What?" he asked too quickly. "Nothing," I said, smiling. He studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing. For the first time, I felt his suspicion touch me like a cold hand on the back of my neck. My heart pounded, but I didn't flinch. He smirked, leaned back, and kissed my temple. "You worry too much." If only he knew. That was the closest I came to being caught. After that, I trained myself to be perfect. To laugh when he expected it, to ask questions without pushing too hard, to tuck away every lie he fed me like another weapon in my arsenal. Step 4 was the mistress. Her name was Lauren. I found that out through a single carelessly saved email in his drafts. A work account, of all things. She was younger, of course, and reckless. Posts on social media I recognized as places he claimed to be working late. Restaurants, wine bars, even a hotel downtown. I began to watch her quietly. Not in person, that would be too obvious, but online, through every breadcrumb she left behind. She didn't know it, but every smiling photo, every tagged location, every careless caption was fuel for the fire I was building. The hardest part was the waiting. There were nights when the weight of it all pressed so hard on my chest I thought I'd crack. Nights when he'd come home smelling faintly of perfume and I'd have to smile, to ask about his day, to let him kiss me goodnight without pulling away. But each time I wanted to break, I reminded myself, this isn't about catching him. This is about crushing him. Weeks passed, and my evidence grew. Bank records, photos, emails. A timeline of his affair cross-stitched with proof of financial fraud. Piece by piece, I built a dossier so airtight it could choke him. One evening, as I laid everything out on the dining table, papers, screenshots, receipts, I realized my hands were steady, my breathing calm. The grief that had once gutted me was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper. This wasn't the plan of a scorned wife anymore. This was the strategy of an executioner. The final piece fell into place almost by accident. I overheard him on the phone with his boss, bragging about a presentation he was set to give at the company's quarterly dinner. "Everyone's going to be there," he said, pride dripping from his voice. And just like that, the stage revealed itself. Not in private, not in court, but in front of the very people who believed in him, who praised him, who saw him as untouchable. That was where he would fall. I gathered the papers into a single thin folder, just enough to look unimpressive, just enough to make the shock worse when it cracked open. As I slid the folder into my bag, a calm washed over me. For the first time since that cursed phone call, I felt in control. The plan wasn't perfect yet, but it was close. And soon, very soon, it would be ready. When Daniel looked at me across the table that night, thanking me for understanding about another late meeting, I smiled sweetly. Because I knew something he didn't. The countdown had already started. The night of the quarterly dinner was crisp. The kind of early spring evening where the air hums with possibility. Daniel had been buzzing about it all week, rehearsing his presentation in front of the mirror, smoothing his suit, bragging that the executives would finally see what he was really made of. If only he knew. I dressed carefully that evening. Nothing flashy, nothing distracting. A black dress, pearls at my ears, heels that clicked sharply against the floor. The kind of outfit that whispered control without asking for it. He didn't even question why I wanted to come. "Of course you should be there," he said, beaming at me. "My wife should see me shine. Shine." That was his favorite word. And tonight, he would burn. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and laughter, glasses clinking, silverware chiming against plates. Rows of round tables stretched across the room, executives in tailored suits and shimmering dresses leaning toward each other with practiced smiles. Daniel fit right in, laughing loudly, shaking hands, soaking in the glow. I stayed by his side at first, smiling politely, answering questions, playing the role of perfect, supportive wife. The folder in my bag felt like an anchor. Thin, unassuming, but heavy with the weight of his downfall. When the speeches began, I slipped away, taking a seat near the front. Daniel climbed onto the stage, confident, polished, beaming like a man who thought the world bent to him. "Good evening," he began, voice smooth. "I'm honored to present tonight." The applause swelled, polite and professional. My pulse beat steady. I waited. He clicked through slides, speaking with practiced charisma. Numbers, projections, promises. I barely heard him. My eyes were fixed on him, and every word he spoke made the fire in my chest burn hotter. He wasn't just lying to me anymore. He was lying to all of them. When the last slide flickered onto the screen, he smiled, basking in their approval. That was my moment. I stood. The scrape of my chair against the floor cut through the applause like a blade. Heads turned. He froze. "Hannah?" he asked, voice faltering. I stepped forward, folder in hand, heels striking the marble floor with deliberate precision. "I think," I said softly but firmly, "there's something the room deserves to know before we congratulate him." A hush fell. Confusion rippled across the tables. Daniel's smile twitched, faltered. "Sweetheart, maybe later." I set the folder on the table nearest the stage, flipping it open with a flick of my wrist. Papers slid out. Photos, bank statements, emails. Cold, undeniable proof. "This," I said, my voice cutting clear through the silence, "is who you're applauding." Gasps. Whispers. The executives leaned forward, eyes darting between me and the papers. One man picked up a sheet, his brows furrowing. "These are... Daniel, these accounts." Daniel's face drained of color. "That's private," he stammered. This isn't the time." But it was. I pulled another paper free, holding it high so everyone could see. Fraud. Transfers in my name. Loans I never signed. And while he was stealing from me, he was doing this. I slid a photo across the table. Lauren, his mistress, wrapped around him outside a hotel, time-stamped and geotagged from her own careless post. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, heads shaking. Daniel stumbled forward, his polished composure crumbling. "Those are lies," he snapped, voice breaking. "Fabrications. She's bitter. She's twisting things." "Am I?" I said calmly, sliding out one final sheet. A forged signature, his arrogance in ink. "Because the bank doesn't think so." His boss, a sharp gray-haired man in the front row, snatched the paper, eyes narrowing as he read. "Daniel," he said slowly, dangerously. "Care to explain why your wife's name is on a loan she didn't sign?" Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His jaw clenched, his eyes darting desperately between me, his boss, the evidence spread like shards across the table. "This isn't," he started. But the murmurs drowned him out. Executives leaned together, whispering, shaking their heads. One woman recoiled when he reached toward her, pulling her hand back like his touch burned. His voice rose, panicked. "You can't believe this. She's lying. She's—" And then from the back of the room, a laugh. A woman's laugh, sharp and familiar. Lauren. Every head turned as she sauntered forward, lips curled in a cruel smile. "She's not lying," she said, her voice carrying. "You told me yourself you'd drain her dry and be free of her." The color drained completely from his face. "Lauren," but she wasn't finished. She pulled her phone from her clutch, screen glowing. "I kept everything. The texts. The promises. Even the video call when you said she'd never notice. Looks like she did." The room spun with whispers. Phones lifted, photos snapped, the scandal already spreading like wildfire. Daniel stumbled, sweat beading on his forehead. "You don't understand," he begged, turning to his boss. "She's crazy. She's—" But the boss wasn't listening. He stood, papers clutched in his hand, eyes cold. "Get out," he said flatly. "Effective immediately. You're finished here." The words hit harder than any slap. Daniel's shoulders sagged, his mouth opening and closing, searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. I stepped closer, my voice low, but cutting through the chaos. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I'd stay blind. But you made one mistake, Daniel. His eyes snapped to mine, desperate, pleading. Hannah, please. I leaned in, close enough that only he could hear the final blow. You underestimated me. I pulled back, watching as the weight of it all crushed him. His career, his reputation, his mistress betraying him. His crimes laid bare. But there was one last blade to twist. From my bag, I drew the final envelope. Divorce papers, filed weeks ago, signed and sealed. I dropped them onto the table in front of him, the sound sharp as a gavel. The room hushed again, everyone watching. Daniel stared at the papers, his hands trembling. You, his voice cracked. You already? Yes, I said simply. While you were busy laughing in our bed, I was busy ending our marriage. You don't just lose me tonight, Daniel. You lose everything. And then I turned, heels clicking against the marble, leaving him standing in the ruins of his own making. The applause that followed wasn't for him. It was for me. The fallout began before the night even ended. By the time I returned home, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Friends, colleagues, even strangers sending me screenshots of posts and whispers already circling through Austin. Photos of the dinner, the papers spread across the table. Lauren's smug smile caught mid-laugh. Daniel's downfall was no longer a secret. It was a story being devoured by anyone who loved a scandal. By morning, it had gone further. His company announced his termination, effective immediately. The press release was polite but brutal, citing ethical breaches and loss of trust. Calls went unanswered, texts unread. Every door he once opened with a smile slammed shut in his face. I watched from my porch with a cup of coffee in hand, the morning air cool against my skin. Across the street, neighbors whispered as he fumbled into his car, tie loose, face drawn. He didn't see me, or maybe he pretended not to. Either way, he drove off too fast, like a man desperate to outrun his own shadow. The humiliation followed him everywhere. His boss filed fraud charges, the bank froze accounts he thought he controlled, and Lauren, foolish, reckless Lauren, released her proof online when he tried to cut her off. Texts, photos, recordings. It was all there, a grotesque highlight reel of his arrogance. The world he had built on charm collapsed in a week. I didn't gloat, not outwardly. When friends called, their voices tight with sympathy and curiosity, I spoke softly. I'm just focusing on moving forward, I told them, the picture of grace. But inside, I was calm, cold, satisfied. Because I knew this wasn't just karma. This was architecture. Every consequence he faced had been placed carefully, brick by my own hand. One night, a week later, he showed up at the house. His house, though not for much longer. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, eyes bloodshot from too many sleepless nights. Hannah, he croaked when I opened the door. Please, please hear me out. I stood in the doorway, blocking him. The man in front of me barely resembled the Daniel I had married. The arrogance was gone, replaced by desperation. You've made your point, he whispered. I've lost everything, but you don't have to do this. We can fix it. Start over. I tilted my head, studying him the way one might study a dying animal. Start over? I repeated. Yes, he pleaded. I'll stop seeing her. I'll sign whatever papers you want. Just don't ruin me completely. Please. For a moment, I let silence stretch between us. His eyes glistened, his voice cracked. Once, years ago, I would have melted, but now, the sight of him begging didn't stir pity. It stirred nothing. You ruined yourself, I said quietly, and closed the door in his face. I heard him curse, then pound the wood once, twice, before his footsteps retreated. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. In the weeks that followed, he spiraled further. Word spread quickly in Austin's business circles. He wasn't just unemployable, he was radioactive. The fraud investigation loomed, and whispers of criminal charges followed him like shadows. The mistress who once clung to him now mocked him openly, her loyalty traded for internet fame. I moved through my life with quiet precision. My accounts were safe. My name was cleared. The house was mine. Friends who once envied me now looked at me with a mix of pity and awe. "You're stronger than I could ever be," one whispered. I only smiled. They didn't know strength had nothing to do with it. This wasn't strength. This was strategy. But the final blow, the one he never saw coming, came a month later. I sat across from my lawyer, sipping tea as she slid a document across the table. "It's finalized," she said. "The divorce, the division of assets, the house, the retirement accounts, even the car, all mine." He had signed everything in a panic, too afraid of court to fight. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came when I saw the last page. A clause I hadn't expected, slipped in with surgical precision by my lawyer at my request weeks before. The clause that gave me sole ownership of a trust fund Daniel's father had left him years ago. Money he had sworn to me didn't exist. Money he had hidden in accounts I wasn't supposed to find. Now it was mine, legally, permanently. I stared at the numbers, zeros stretching across the page. Generational wealth, handed down through his family, gone from his grasp forever. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. Not loud, not hysterical. Just a soft, genuine laugh that tasted like victory. Somewhere across town, Daniel was probably still scrambling, calling old contacts, begging for loans, trying to salvage scraps of a reputation that was already dust. He thought he had hit bottom when he lost his job, his mistress, his home. He thought the humiliation at that dinner was the end. But this was the end. The cruel, perfect irony. He had stolen from me, lied to me, betrayed me. And now, by his own signature, every cent he thought he owned belonged to me. When I stepped out of the office that day, the sun was warm, the city humming around me. I felt lighter than I had in years. Not healed. Healing is for people who walk away. No, I wasn't healed. I was victorious. And Daniel? He wasn't just ruined. He was erased. My story is a reminder that betrayal always carries a price. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If you've ever faced deceit, or if you've felt the sting of trust being broken, I want to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story struck a chord with you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these stories alive, and together, we'll keep unmasking the truth that others try so hard to hide.